The most common lie I think that I see people tell themselves is, "I could never."
Mm.
And that's just a broadly speaking, "I could never." Um, and people I've worked with as a coach have heard me say, "If you could never, then you won't ever."
Hi, everyone. The hardest decisions don't come with instructions, just opinions, expectations, and a whole lot of unsolicited advice. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we talk about what it really takes to choose ourselves, even when it's not popular. I'm your host, Jameelah Calhoun. Today's guest is someone who coaches high achieving professionals through uncertainty using mindfulness. For her, mindfulness is not a buzzword. It is a practical framework reconnecting us to our deepest values and helping people navigate career transformation. Shannon Reinard Demko is the founder of Mindful MBA and has over 2 decades of experience helping professionals like you and me step into their purpose and change their lives. Let's get into it. Welcome in, Shannon. I'm so thrilled that we're finally here. Ever since we met a couple months ago, I've been waiting for this moment. So thank you so much for being on.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. So happy to be here, Jamila.
Well, before we go any further, would you tell our audience what the unpopular decision you help people with is?
Sure. So I'm a coach and my name is Shannon, and I help people make unpopular decisions using both their intuition and their intellect to change their lives and careers for deep personal alignment.
Ooh, there are so many layers to that. And it's so timely. Just so many of our listeners are going through career transitions, and our economy is going through transitions with new technology. So I just know that this is going to be such an important topic that's going to resonate with so many of our listeners. So thank you for
Oh, my
sharing
pleasure.
your work here.
Yeah. No, I'm really
Um,
excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, in your work, what is the most common lie that people tell themselves, especially when they're on the brink of thinking about making a big change to their career direction?
That's such a great question, of course. The most common lie I think that I see people tell themselves is, "I could never."
Mm.
And that's just a broadly speaking, "I could never." Um, and people I've worked with as a coach have heard me say, "If you could never, then you won't ever."
Mm.
Um, and what that really means is when we have those moments in life where, like, the first disruptive thought enters the chat, where we've been kinda coasting along and things have been going well, and we make good decisions that make people proud, so we're generally applauded by our community. And then you have a moment where you think, "You know what would be really cool, though?" When you're daydreaming or whatever, right? Maybe actually dreaming, and it enters the chat, and it feels very uncomfortable. Right, and by the chat, of course, I mean the internal chatter. It feels very
Mm.
uncomfortable. I mean, maybe it feels great because 'cause you're like, "It would be so cool if I was doing this thing." When that happens, it usually doesn't last very long, especially early on, before it encounters the lie, "Well, I could never." And here's all the reasons why I could never, right? There's always a reason
Right.
not to do something. Sometimes there's many. But I think that lie is really powerful because it's usually the result of programming that we've been exposed to over many years, maybe our entire lifetime. But like I said, if you could never, then you won't ever. Then okay,
Yeah.
you won't.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. Just as the one statement. It is, you know, 3 words, and yet it
Mhm.
really could determine your trajectory in such a major way. And like you said, the brain and our upbringing will bring all kinds of obstacles into our path and put that into our thoughts. So when you're thinking about supporting people who are particularly in high achieving spaces, you've mentioned people who have pretty much made great decisions their whole life. They've gotten the accolades, etc. Why do they sometimes have almost a harder time moving towards a more aligned and mindful path? Are they almost more susceptible to this idea of I could never than others?
They can be, um, but I think among high achieving folks, the idea of I could never is so powerful because we have an outsized amount of power on our own destiny, right? Compared to other folks in the world. And it can't that can be true no matter where you started from. If you're someone who's in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, you may have started from a place where no one was ever thinking they could be where you are now. But now you're here and you have an incredible amount of, or you're in a place where you have more um, kind of independent authority over your own life than you may have had previously, right? And so the more power you have over your own path, the more power you have to stop yourself from trying things, if that makes sense.
It does. It also makes me think about the moments where I've been making maybe a big transition or considering it. You also feel, at least internally, like you have more to lose. You're
Oh
more
yeah.
attached to the title that you have. You're more attached to the lifestyle that you've been living, potentially as you get, further and further into your career. And so it also feels like there are more eyes on you, potentially judging or evaluating, oh, like, why would they do that? So I think all of those new kind of pressures and perspectives can all conspire to make that leap feel even higher off the ground than it actually is. To your point.
I think that you hit on something really important there, which is the eyes that are on you, right? Is this idea of the further along I've gone, doing things that were fairly, accepted by whoever my community is, my family, my community, my culture, whatever. Um, the more you do that, the more you become accustomed to that sense of approval.
Hmm.
Right? And so you can become kind of connected with your identity, conflating your self-worth as a person with what you do or what you've achieved or what you have. And kind of one of those things we could almost commodify it as a thing that you have is this overwhelming agreement and approval of whoever the most important stakeholders are for you personally.
Hmm.
And that's a thing that you probably are as attached to as, your house or your title or, your car, your vacations, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Is not having to manage the psychological work of those relationships and coming up against the expectations of that community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting, of course, is that this is a moment where career paths are way less linear than they ever have been in the past. And workers actually change jobs over a dozen times in their lifetime. And as I mentioned at the outset, literally in this moment, it's like 60% of professionals are actively exploring new roles. So it's really interesting how incredibly common this inflection point is. And yet, in those moments, it can feel really isolating or that everyone's paying attention to you and not their own situations, which is usually more the case. But I guess for you, what was the moment where you started to feel like this is a broader phenomenon happening that you wanted to actually help people through? What was that spark to really start getting involved in this work?
Yeah, I think there have been a few different moments. There's the moment when I realized that I wanted to be a coach. And my
Mhm.
background, before I even went into coaching was in business school admissions and graduate admissions around MBA programs, specialized master's programs in finance and real estate and things like that. Um, so there was that moment of I want to coach rather than be doing kind of school specific admissions work, which I can talk about. And then there was a moment when I realized that practices like mindfulness, breath
Mm,
work, et cetera, had a really important potential value, a lot of value to add in the space. But for me, I was in admissions for 10 years at two different schools, and I loved admissions work, and I still love all of my friends in MBA admissions. And when the opportunity came up to become a coach, I realized that's actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the back end of this process, working with individuals, helping them shape their story and really do the personal work to understand how they got to this point. And the more I got into that, the more complex I realized those conversations were going to be, because it isn't just like, let's get your statements right, or let's
mhm.
make sure all the things we also do. Let's get your academics straightened up. Let's get your resume looking nice, but let's make sure that you don't only just kind of sell yourself in this process, but that you actually develop and grow through this
Mhm.
process, that it moves you towards something, that you make the most of it, and it moves you towards something that is meaningful and important to you, at least as best as you know right now. And that is heavy lifting. And then the kind of second part of my origin story,
Yeah.
I actually did have one of those like clouds parting, like aha moments when it comes to mindfulness because
Well, you're lucky. I feel like so many of
I know,
us wish we got that clear sign at those
well,
moments.
yeah, I mean, I got the sign, but here's the thing about signs is
Yeah.
that they, in my opinion, they come from intuition
Mm,
and we don't always listen to them. In fact, more often than
yes.
not, we don't. So I got lucky in that I got hit hard enough that it kind of stayed with me, but I didn't run out of the experience and build everything you see right now on Mindful MBA. And I was doing a presentation at a weekend seminar event that MLT was hosting. I was doing it with a coworker who's still a coworker of mine at MLT. And we were going to give a session on interviewing for pre-MBA students, MBA applicants. And it was a standard, like what we hoped was going to be a super dynamic and fantastic presentation up on the stage at Stanford GSB in their
Mhm.
auditorium there. And we had slides and all that stuff. And we were standing waiting for it to be our turn to go out and present. And I turned to her and I said, I think I want to teach them pranayama. And
Mm.
she looked at me and she was like, I don't know what you just said, but we've been working on this for like a month. And like, what? Like, what are
Right.
you
Like
doing?
now's not the time. Like
Yeah,
stick
we
to the
had it all,
script.
like, our slide 1 to 3 and your slide 4 to 7, like, we had that all, right, figured out, as one does. Um, and so I don't sound like I'm just speaking gibberish here. Pranayama is just another word for breath work. And
Mm,
breath work is just another word for breathing on purpose, right? And what I was saying was from my own experience, I've been doing yoga and meditation and breath work and practices like that since I was in grad school, which was a very long time ago. We're talking decades, right? So I was all I was thinking was kind of thinking out loud, like, I think I want to teach them just how to use breath. I was specifically thinking about the moments before your interview starts, and you might be sitting in
mhm.
a waiting room somewhere or in a Zoom waiting room, and you're nervous, right? You're
Right.
nervous because you care about this endeavor, and you want it to go well. So I went out there and spontaneously had this group of pre MBAs do a 90-second deep breathing exercise and presented it to them as something you can try. You're breathing anyway, you might as well try breathing on purpose in a way that your nervous system is actually designed to benefit from. This is something we all do, right? Ever since you
Right.
were little, your friend would fall down and then cry, and you'd say, it's okay, okay, take a deep breath, right? We know this intuitively, instinctively. So I did it. And literally, as I was standing there watching them all take these deep breaths, I thought, oh, wow, this is actually something incredibly useful and important for more reasons than just it can help you regulate your stress symptoms before an
Mhm.
interview, right? This is actually so much more. From there, I started like, oh, I'll do a little breathing session. I'll do a little mindfulness session. I'll do these little sessions within the context of that program that I was coaching in. But it took me about 2 years to really kind of sit down, be like, okay, this is a thing, and we're turning it into something more material.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point, I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'll stop talking.
No, you totally did. I mean, it definitely sounds like that moment on stage was the moment where you're like, wait, I could actually infuse these different parts of myself, the mindfulness and breath
Yeah.
work that you were clearly personally engaged with into the work that you were doing professionally with pre-MBA candidates and into your coaching. But I think many people probably listening can relate to that idea of I had this spark, but it took me 2 years to really act on it. What was happening for you in that interim period internally that kind of made that process of getting to action maybe a little bit slower than you might have thought or expected?
I'm, like, time traveling back into it now, because it's been over 10 years.
Yeah.
I think in that time, what I was doing was a combination of things because that space is really important, I think.
Mm,
That space is one that we could call stalling, self-doubt.
mm,
We could sort of cast it in that light as, wow, 2 whole years from this, bolt of lightning moment to actually building something up, that people can access. And sure, was there some of that? Yes. Was I thinking small? Yes. Was I not considering myself to be someone despite having stood in front of literally like 300 people, I think, and spontaneously brought them all into a breathwork session. That was true, and yet I wasn't believing in myself as that person, or that the value was present beyond the context that I had kind of safely launched it in, right? So that was happening. But also in that kind of a incubational period, um, learning was happening, right? I
mm,
was taking steps, small steps, but I was building myself as the person who was ready to launch Mindful MBA. There is a thing sometimes that I encounter as someone who's been in the MBA space now for decades, um, an overvaluing of urgency.
mm.
There's an
Yes.
overvaluing of scaling, right? It needs to happen now. You need to fail fast. It needs to be big. What's the plan for maxing this out?
Right.
And that's not always in alignment. And eventually, I had to have a conversation with myself about forced creativity and where that can lead us sometimes. I know a lot of like writers and artists and musicians feel that as well when you're just like, I need to, they're asking me for another book, another album, another painting, like whatever it is. And sometimes you just have to wait till the stuff flows through you. And I think the creation of anything is art, right? The creation of a business, the creation of a plan, the daydreaming that goes into it, the sketching, the conversations that are like, okay, help me think about how to move this forward, are a form of art. And sometimes things, the flow needs to come.
Yeah, there are so many reflections. This is such an important point. Well, number one, we are still waiting for Rihanna's album. So just putting that out there yet
It's
again.
not
Like,
off the
take your
hook.
time, but like still.
Speaking of creation, right? Like
Right,
3 babies in
exactly.
how many years?
We're still waiting.
She's launching other kinds of products over there, but wait,
Exactly, exactly, launching her family and, of course, her businesses, but it also resonates with me personally. Even this podcast, I literally had a friend text me the other night, like, I remember you talking about doing a podcast in 2018. So talk about being in the middle and kind of being in that mode of hearing kind of a call, but I think this reframe that you've offered of it not being about stalling, but still being about preparation and about cultivating your own kind of passion and intuition for what you're going to build. And the timing, whatever it happens, is the right timing. And so I think that is just a really important message. And I'm bearing that out. Sounds like you also bore that out in the timeline that you were building what you were doing as well. So maybe on some maybe a little bit easier decisions. I'd love for us to like do a quick round of would you rather.
Ooh,
This is going to be, just some fun takes to see how you think about being more present and wellness in your life. So hopefully this is an area where we can just practice our decision making skills, but like super fast. So
okay. I'll
I
do my
love
best.
it.
I am a Libra.
Um,
Decisions are actually not a forte.
not a Libra. I love it. I love it. I'm a Virgo, so
Well, you
we'll
love a
see how this
decision.
goes.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Exactly. No, no,
Mm.
no. We'll be great. We'll be great. So would you rather meditate every morning for a month or take a month off of social media?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say meditate every morning for a month. First of all,
Mm,
because I'm, a person and sometimes don't get to my meditation practice, even though I'm the mindful MBA person. Um, and the other thing is that I have been really intentional over the past couple weeks specifically
mm,
about curating my social media. And it's
mm.
actually full right now. It still has some stuff that I'm like, and it still is a dopamine thing. I don't want to be looking at it. But when I do, there's some really kind of cool, uplifting and inspirational
Mm.
stuff that's in there. Um, but I do want to use it less at the same time. But I'll go with
It's
meditating.
so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, both are hard to your point. Like, I
Mhm.
definitely have always had a goal of meditating or journaling every day. And yeah, like it's definitely hard. But I have been successful in taking like usually like 2 to 3 months off of social media at various
Ooh.
points. And it you feel the difference for sure.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Would you rather quit a job dramatically or quietly plan your exit for a year?
Ooh. So again, I'm Libra. I'm gonna go with quietly plan my exit for a year.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I've been taking softer approaches to things lately anyway. And I really don't think you need to burn a bridge unless you really need to burn
mhm.
that bridge. You can, set things up well, make sure those that will still be there after you are supported and have what they need to continue the work so that it's not just about it's never just about you, right?
Yeah.
And that like throw a grenade and run out can feel satisfying for a few minutes and then you're like, "Oh no. Those people are still in there and nobody
Yeah.
knows where my files are." Shoot. So,
Well, definitely, Virgo here definitely would lean towards quietly planning your
mhm.
exit for a year, but I do fantasize about the quitting a job dramatically. It always looks so empowering when you see it in movies,
I
that I'm
know.
like, "Oh, man, I wish I had the gumption," but to your
Yeah.
point, I think there are ways to still feel like you're moving towards what you want next, even if you're still staying in the job and quietly planning. Like,
Yeah.
I remember once I had a, like, invite on my calendar for, like, the date that I was going to leave months in advance. I, like, pre-wrote my, like, resignation letter, just things to get into the headspace, "Okay, this is happening. I have a plan," and build that anticipation so it doesn't feel like you're, like, every day, like, "Oh, I can't wait, I can't wait." So
Yeah, and I bet that changed your experience of the job those last few months as
mhm.
well. Like, I'm sure it was very regulating for your stress management to be like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, this is temporary. I'm gonna exist on the other side of this, and it's gonna be okay." You know?
right. And to stay committed, because to your point earlier, there's the voices coming up throughout that time frame that's like, maybe you shouldn't quit, or like, there's got to
Right.
be another way, and you're have to constantly reinforce for yourself like this is the path. And so having those kind of milestones or other things in front of you to remind you to like stick with it is also really important. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've also been really lucky in that I've never had a job that I would have wanted to leave dramatically.
Mm.
Maybe very early in my career. I should probably put an asterisk on that, but, like, as my career evolved, I would have been like, you know, "Throw the grenade," and then it would have been like, "Oh my god, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Are you okay? I love you so much. You've been such a wonderful boss."
Yeah.
I could have, but yeah, everything you said about, just the preparation and the preparing yourself as well,
Mhm.
so that you don't walk out, hyperventilating with no idea what's next. You don't need to do that to yourself unless you
Right.
really need to, right? Something
Yeah.
happens.
Right. Right. In the mindfulness space, and there are many different resources as well as gurus, if you will, and people who are in that space. Who do you kind of tend to really seek out or find is really worth their salt? Because I'm sure there's some skeptics listening today who are just like, I'm not sure about this mindfulness thing. So I'd love for them to hear from you on some folks that are really actually doing the work.
Yeah. This is I feel like the answer here is can be very personal. There are a
Hmm.
lot of right answers here. Like the answer that I really want to give actually comes from a mindfulness teacher named Sharon Salzberg, who says that the best kind of mindfulness is the kind you actually do. Right.
Mm.
So when you are out there on the internet or wherever, scanning for resources and you find something and you're like, I really like this. I like this resource. I'm going to come back to this and make it part of my routine. Then bingo, that's the right one.
Nice.
For me, one of the teachers that I really like, because I really like her writing style, is Pema Chodron, Pemachudron. When I need to meditate and I'm out of my practice, I think having apps on your phone is great. Something that you can just, no matter what the brain is saying about, do I have time? Do I whatever, da, da, da,
Mhm.
and you're literally just opening the app and pressing play while the brain is saying all that, like just start. I listen to the Calm app.
Mm.
I have the subscription so I can do the daily Calm. But I just think it's about not looking for the perfect thing. It's just looking for something that you'll do right
Mhm.
now, that will
Yeah.
push you to say, "Okay, let me find space for this. Let me prioritize this," because speaking from experience as a human, it's very easy to backseat this in a busy day, right? Even people do it with like full blown physical workouts, and those things change you in a way that when you walk in a room, everybody says, "Wow, have you been working out?" You get that reward. This is the kind of workout that changes your experience of being in that body, your
Mhm.
experience of being yourself, your experience of driving in traffic, your experience of talking to difficult family members, managing huge pileups on your work desk, your experience of living through the ups and downs of life, that comes more slowly, maybe, um, and always feels imperfect, right? So you'll never get to a point where you sit in a practice of any kind and say, "Wow, I'm so good at this.
Mhm.
I did an A+ job at that." It's always going to feel messy. And the thing that I would say is remember thoughts are going to distract you. Sounds in the room and outside are going to distract you. The point is not to not get distracted. The
Mhm.
point is to become someone who notices when they have become distracted and has, therefore, the ability to choose if they follow the distraction or come back to the practice.
Right.
That's presence. And that's
Yeah.
all we're trying to cultivate.
I guess one area you did touch on is this idea of like listening to your intuition for when is that moment. But I think one of the things that is sometimes difficult to distinguish is what is the fear response versus the
Yes.
intuitive response. Like they're both coming from inside of you. And you're like, okay, well, I felt my hands shake and maybe I felt this tingle on my skin. Like which one they're both coming from inside you. So how do you help people kind of distinguish between those two and figure out which part to listen to first?
Yeah. I mean, wow, Jameelah. So I have been actually spending part of today thinking about this, like
Mm,
doing this own work within myself over something unrelated. I can give advice here. But everything I say, always, everything I write, like all of it is for me as well as you. Like I'm a
mhm.
person, I'm a living work in progress, like everyone. And these are like notes from the field, really,
Yes, I feel the same
Uh,
way with this platform. So,
yeah, it's like, I'm always learning in every conversation I have, but um that is such an important question. What is the difference between my intuition and if we feel like the answer is no, is it intuition or is it fear? Another
mhm,
way that I sometimes think of that is this information or is
mhm,
it fear? Is it direction or is it fear? Right?
mm,
Is this something useful and important or is it a normal fear response? Um, and so I'll give you kind of a short answer and then a longer answer.
mhm,
The short answer in my experience is that intuition speaks very succinctly.
mm,
Intuition speaks in yes, no, more or less, now, later, right, left, like that sort of thing.
mm,
Fear protects the ego, right? These parts of ourselves, which are also important. There's no part of ourself that is unnecessary and not useful somewhere, right? Um, but fear gives soliloquies.
mm,
It gives TED Talks, right? Fear is, shouldn't do this because if I do, people will say this person will be disappointed. What if I fail? Do I have enough money for this? Do I? And not bad questions, right? Fear's asking useful questions, but sometimes it's just making up stories and telling lies. Um, but even within that, like let's say we're having, an internal landslide about resources. Do I have enough money to do this? Really important question. Go to your bank account, go to your statements and answer it,
mm,
right? Do the math and answer it versus that feeling of like that feeling of fear that's being activated there will not be entirely calmed by the actual mathematical information. Yes, I do have enough money, right? It'll be like, okay, then, well, what if your friends don't want to be friends with you anymore, or your mom's not proud of you, or whatever, right? Like, okay, well, you solve that. Let me attach to something else because it is, a neurochemical response versus an intuitive response. So that's the short answer that turned long, which is that typically, like intuition just says no, period.
mm,
Yes, exclamation mark. It doesn't say yes, and here's why, and here's all the that's a different part of you at that point that's mapping out all the great things, great reasons to say yes. Um,
yeah.
the longer answer is actually a little more connected to mindfulness.
Mm,
And one of the, I think the great benefits of doing the work, as we say, like being willing to work with yourself through moments like this, is being able to sit with yourself no matter what you're feeling. And there are always exceptions to that. Like I'm a yoga teacher, and I always say, if you're feeling pain right now, back out, take care of yourself, and do what you need to do. If you're feeling uncomfortable, breathe, stay. If you're like, this is awkward, I don't make this shape every day. Of course not. That's why you came to yoga, right? If you feel awkward and weird, then breathe, right? If you're in danger, back away. But mindfulness teaches us how to ask the question, is this direction or is this fear?
Mm.
And to sit in the ambiguity of maybe not knowing, to sit with the answer, this is fear, and look at it, right? It's literally like the energetic equivalent of taking it and putting it in your hands and saying, okay, I'm afraid. Why? What am I telling myself? What am I afraid of? And is that real? Do I actually need to go to the bank account and figure out if I have enough money for this? Or do I have to sit with this idea I have that my friends won't like me anymore?
Mm.
And what does that mean? What can I learn from that, right? Being able to sit with yourself and look at what you are holding is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And I would argue it's very difficult to make sustainable, unpopular decisions without
Mhm.
that ability to endure discomfort,
Right.
not disassociating from it, pushing it away, pretending it isn't there, but to actually sit and be like, let me look at this fear. And like any kind of playground bully, you look at it long enough, some of the power starts to disintegrate, right? That, like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm actually just really afraid of um not being a vice president anymore
Mhm.
because it took me X years to get there. And I don't really know who I am if I'm not working for this company. Okay, let's sit with that. Again, take the urgency out of it. This is not a problem to solve as you sit here and talk to yourself right now. These are the kinds of questions that you can leave open on the table as you go about your day, make your dinner,
Yeah.
whatever, and just say, I'm going to be compassionate with myself and allow the answers to come through because I'm going to I'm going to stick with myself no matter what the answers are, right?
Yeah,
That's a self-worth
absolutely.
exercise.
Yeah, no, I'd love how you walked us through that. It's definitely something that, I've had to check in with myself when I've been making bigger career pivots of like, what am I staying attached to in terms of my identity or my current situation that isn't really aligned with where I want to end up. And sometimes there's also that element of allowing your mind to take you to like further out of your current space so that you're able to think more broadly about, well, if my end game is, really about a legacy of helping people feel more courageous, like maybe this other path doesn't really help me get closer to that. So I also think the
Mm.
space in meditation and other quiet moments to broaden the time horizon is also an important element of helping yourself get out of just the immediacy of the fear-based response too.
It's amazing how willing our brains are to focus on what could go wrong instead
Mhm.
of choosing to spend that same amount of energy on thinking about what could go right
Yes.
and what it looks like um, when it does. And more importantly, I think how it feels when it does,
Mm.
because we can access that now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like imagine a mindfulness exercise, quote unquote, that is actually about sitting down, maybe closing your eyes, maybe not, and thinking about how it feels when it goes right.
Yeah.
And the attachment, if there is any, is to that feel. This is how I want to feel when I wake up in the morning on a day when I have work to do. This is how I wanna feel when I open
Mhm.
my eyes and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's Monday." Sit with that feeling without being attached to, "I have to wake up in an apartment in this neighborhood, and it has to have this in it, and I have to be wearing this kind of pajama." Like, no.
Yeah.
Let 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 the universe do some of the work in meeting you there and showing you, actually, when you wanna feel that way, this is how it's gonna look. And that's some of the redirection that we get when I think you and I have talked about this before in our chats, but thinking about failure, quote unquote, as redirection and not
Mhm.
as actually, a missed opportunity. I love that saying that what is for you will not miss you.
Right.
Well, what isn't for you will. And thank goodness, because then you wouldn't be in the right place at the right time for the right thing to start.
Exactly. Exactly. I've also heard the term "no" means next opportunity.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I love
love it.
that. I'm sure I came across it somewhere on social media.
Yeah,
But when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's another way of this idea of like the universe is intentional. If it's a no, that's the right
yeah,
no. So I love that as part of our ability to get comfortable with what feels like rejection, but it doesn't have to be framed
yeah.
that way.
While also acknowledging that, you know, it feels bad. That's
Mhm.
okay. Like, feel
Yeah.
it. Gosh, I really wanted that. It appears that it's not what's happening. And today, right now, I don't like that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let myself sit in how that feels so that it can move through me. Not stew in it, not pity party, right? Not try to drag it out. One of the things that we're great at is at humans is prolonging the plot, right? Like
Mhm.
stretching it out where in actuality, the average emotion, so emotions are chemical experiences in the body that are often connected to thoughts that bring them about. That chemical transaction takes about 90 seconds. But in
Wow.
sessions, I often ask people, have you ever been angry or at someone for longer than 90 seconds? Yes, I'm still mad at someone from high school, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you keep thinking about what they did and you
Right.
start it again every time. So I do think it's important to be like, okay, I'm actually going to let this process today. I'm going to be like, this is how I feel. And just like, the playground bully we were talking about earlier, eventually it runs its course, and you get to actually move on instead of being like, well, forget them, forget that company, that school, that person that broke up with me, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I'm going to hold a grudge. That's taking up bandwidth. That is wasting space in your life. Let it go.
Right.
And thank goodness at some point you'll be holding something else instead and say, well, thank goodness I didn't have that other opportunity to distract me from this.
Wasting space.
Mhm.
That is definitely something for all of us to take away and just think about what we can let go of and just it's above me now.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that. One of the elements of course, this process is really to get closer in touch with our North Star.
Mhm.
Like after you've worked with a client and they've made this maybe unpopular career choice or career transition, what part of the aftermath is harder than expected? And what part is like potentially way better than they anticipated, like in
Mhm.
their kind of minds, worst case scenarios?
Yes, the aftermath. I love this. I think that one of the best things about it is the relief that comes with finally doing the thing. There is a
Mm,
relief. Like it is no longer on your plate, right? You have done the thing. And the reminder of how powerful you are, that
mm,
you chose this for yourself and now you're able to move into this choice because you chose it for yourself, right? And just a
yeah.
reminder of how powerful we are over ourselves, right? How much self-efficacy we have. Um Challenges come with the building that has to happen from there, right? So
Mm,
we don't usually go from like slide right in and everything is like prefab ready to go. Depending on the choice, or you might be building a podcast from the ground up and you're like, oh, I finally made the leap, I'm doing it, but now I'm like doing it. Right. uh,
yeah.
and that's work. Even if it's, a job that you really wanted to get at a company, well, now you're the new person at a company, so let's
Right.
build up from there. And the reality, the understanding and acceptance that making the right choice doesn't mean that everything's easy on the other side,
Mm,
right?
right.
It can be very challenging. There are rainy days everywhere, and there are gonna be days where you're like, "Ugh, why did I do this?" That's normal. That's
Yeah.
normal response to challenge, um, and just know that when that happens, you're okay. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong place, or that you
Right.
did the wrong thing. Um, Yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
balance. There's that high of like, "Oh my god, I did it. I got it. It's working. It's happening." And then there's a like, "Oh wow, wait. Okay, now I've actually landed and I have to build it."
Right. Right. I mean, and it's such a great point, especially as we're starting to wrap here. I think one of the elements that I also hear from people is they're maybe feeling a bit of regret about their current situation or feeling like it's too late or
Yeah.
it would just the moment has passed, right? I hear that sometimes from people. What would you say to someone who's maybe feeling that about their current situation and not sure if they're up for doing the work to get to a different
Yeah.
path?
Yeah, I think, you have so much power and you have freedom to choose, and either
Mm,
choice is okay, right? So I think one of the, really important things that both of us would agree on is that if you feel as if you're on the brink of an unpopular decision, quote unquote, and then you decide it's actually not right for you, right? You do all the
mhm,
things we've talked about here. You check in, okay, it's not fear, it's information, whatever, whatever. Great. You did it. Right?
right.
Like, that's your choice, and that's amazing. But in terms of, like, it's too late, if you woke up today, it's not too late. You were given a whole
Yes.
day, you woke up, which means you're not done with this life, and there's no reason for you to put it on cruise control and just slide into, whatever the final scene is. If you woke up, you have the opportunity to do something different. And you can ask yourself, right? So I don't know if you're, in your 70s right now and you're like, I've been in marketing my whole life and I always just really wanted to be a doctor. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to try to go to med school and do all that, but maybe the next question would be, okay, if I don't become an MD, what else could I maybe do? Like, what is the need? What is the urge? What is this bringing about? Do I actually want to do something that helps people in a physical wellness, medical kind of way? Or am
Mhm.
I thinking and kind of, reminiscing, wondering what that path would have looked like? But if it really is that, hey, there's this part of me that wants to help people in this way, maybe you're not going to go all the way through to med school. Again, somebody somewhere is gonna be 90 years old and graduate from med school this year, right? That's awesome. But maybe it's about figuring out what is this itch and what are some other ways to scratch it. But
Yes.
certainly just sitting around and being like, "Well, I guess I can't do anything because it's too late now," is not the answer. It's never the answer.
Right. Yeah, it takes us back to the beginning of where we were talking about the I could never. Is that
Yes.
you won't, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely full circle there.
Yeah.
And I guess our last question, because we're all about building the courage to live your truth, what would you say to the haters, the people who judge, kind of people making these big career choices, or people who judge mindfulness potentially as a practice without really understanding the reality?
I would say I hope you get to a point where you feel comfortable enough addressing whatever in you is making this so uncomfortable for you,
Mm,
right? That if you watch somebody make an unpopular decision and make that move and you're mad at them about it, why? How can you take care of yourself in that moment without putting that emotion on their choices,
yeah.
right? And typically a feeling that arises is actually jealousy, right? That can arise sometimes. um, Feelings of anger or frustration at whatever we feel our constraints might be that would prevent us from, we believe, make us think I could never. Um, why does what that person is choosing to do for themselves make you so upset when they're not doing
Mm,
it to you and they're not asking you to come or forcing you to stay? Right? Why does that upset you so much? And I hope, like, again, awareness is the beginning of transformation. If you're willing to sit with that discomfort and ask it what it is, you begin to free yourself and really understand your own power to make your own choices without regard to other people's journeys and paths and decisions. That your all of that energy can and should be directed back to you. And for people who don't think mindfulness is a thing, that's okay. Mindfulness is actually a really big umbrella term that covers
Mhm.
lots and lots of things, different kinds of physical activity, breath work, meditation practice. It's literally anything that involves paying attention to the present moment and without judgment. You can wash your dishes mindfully just by paying
Mhm.
attention to the temperature of the water and the smell of the soap and the splash of the water and things like that. Um, so if you feel like none of this is for you, that's totally okay. I hope that you find another way or that you already have another way of connecting to yourself, honoring yourself, loving yourself in a way that helps you be more able to share all that with other people. And if you've got that, you're good, I'm good. Again, your path, my path. Let's just find our way peacefully together.
I love it. Shannon, thank you so much for being on
Excellent.
Unpopular Decisions. I love this conversation. I feel like there were so many nuggets that I'm sure are going to stick with our audience because there were several that I'm taking away myself. Um, but yeah, thank you. If something about this episode stuck with you, it's not an accident. You're probably ready to start writing your own script and take that leap. Make sure to subscribe to Unpopular Decisions wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if this definitely resonated, share it with someone else who might get something from it too. We're on a mission to inspire 1 million brave life choices. So thanks for listening, and I'm glad you're here.